Put your faith in the light.
Hello guys, welcome to another one of my videos. This is Lightblade. And well guys, in this one I'll be making my Season 4 Retribution Paladin guide for Mythic Plus dungeons. Here you will find information about the best talents, Soulbinds, Legendaries, stat weights, and special gear that we can get this experimental Season 4. So with that out of the way, let's start with talents. Okay guys, talents are pretty much the same as Season 3, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here explaining what each talent does. Basically just copy this setup and you should be fine. The only things that you could make some iterations on are the utility talents. Instead of Fist of Justice, you might be able to take Blinding Light if you want that extra AoE interrupt. Or if you want another type of healing, you can take Selfless Healer instead of Healing Hands. Or instead of Cavalier, you can take Unbreakable Spirit if you want more Divine Shields and more Shields of Vengeance. But for the most, the damage talents are already set in stone. So now let's move into Soulbinds. Okay guys, let's talk about the Soulbinds. So there's two Soulbinds that are pretty good for us this Season 4, and the first one is Mechanicus and the second one is Paladin. Let's talk about Mechanicus. So Mechanicus is the pretty straightforward Soulbind. His gimmick is that he relies you getting hits on a lot of number of mobs. So to proc the max value of Hammer of Genesis, you need to hit 5 targets, and to proc the max value of Effusive Animax Radio, you need 4 targets. So if those targets conditions are met, you will get the max value of this Soulbind. If there isn't those conditions met, you can actually go to the other side and get a triple potency with him. So normally I recommend going with Virtuous Command, Truth's Wake, and Ring Clarity if you're going the triple route. This will be your route normally taken in the new dungeons like Upper Karazhan, Workshop, and Grimgrove Depot. Those dungeons have very little mob count, so this route will be better than just going with the Hammer of Genesis. Even though Hammer of Genesis normally sims very well, it relies, like I said before, on number of targets. On all other dungeons, you can just go this route with Mechanicus because you will get the value of Hammer of Genesis and Effusive Animax Radio. Now let's talk about the other Soulbind that's viable, and this is Pelagos. Pelagos is a bit more like does everything Soulbind because he gives you just stats. He's basically a big stat stick, and he will do good in single target and AoE. You don't have to basically change anything. The most powerful of his abilities is Combat Meditation. Whenever you use Divine Toll, you will get 315 mastery for 10 seconds. If you do the minigame and gather the little orbs, you will get 20-second duration of this thing. 315 mastery is basically 15% extra damage, which is pretty strong if you stack cooldowns multiplicative over your wings and other stuff that you have. Pelagos always allows you to go triple potency route, so you will get Ring Clarity, Virtuous Command, and Truth's Wake for Mythic Plus dungeons. He also has benefits of defensive abilities. Let Go of the Past gives you a 3% damage reduction on magic damage, which is pretty useful because there's a lot of magic damage in these new dungeons. For example, in Upper Karazhan with the Medivh fight, and a lot of stuff like in the ground, fire effects in Grimgrove Depot. So this is a pretty decent Soulbind to take if you want to take a bit more defensive approach. Other than that, you also get Better Together, which is a nice buff for you and someone else in your group. You get 40 mastery, which is for us at least 2% extra damage. For other people it can be more, it can be less, but you're helping your group. And the last ability of Pelagos is Newfound Resolve. This is a really powerful ability because you get 10% of all your total strength. Okay, so the thing is, this is a bit tricky. So the ghost spawns and you have 15 seconds to look at the ghost. You can actually make the ghost line up with your cooldowns. If you, let's say you have 15 seconds of your wings left, and you can delay looking at the ghost till your wing cooldown is back, and then you can look at the ghost, get the 10%, pop cooldowns, and just stack all those multiplicative effects together. In my opinion, Pelagos is just a better version than Mechanicus because he does it all. You know, he doesn't require you to have number of targets or anything. He will just do the damage, but he does require you to play those small mini games that can be sometimes distracting. So those are the drawbacks in between the Soulbind, but both are pretty decent and viable. So now let's go to the next part of the video. Okay guys, let's talk about stat weights. So for Retribution Paladins, basically all our stats are pretty close together, but as a good rule of thumb, you can follow this stat weight guideline, you know. So First of all, strength is always king because, well, item level is really strong in Shadowlands. After that, we have a nice amount of mastery is really good, recommended in Mythic Plus dungeons. After that, you want a really nice amount of haste. I recommend between 25 to 30% haste is fine. After that, you want to get critical strike or versatility, and both stats are pretty close together. Even though they are kind of last here, they are pretty decent stats to have, especially crit, because like last season we have the overwhelming power crystal to supplement some of our critical strike. We could kind of ignore it back then, but now we actually need some critical strike because we don't have that trinket anymore. So don't be shy of getting critical strike. I'm also going to be talking about the affix here. So what's the best stat to pick at the start of the key? You either can get 2% haste, 2% critical strike, 1% versatility, or 69 points of stat of mastery per Dreadlord you kill because of the affix. So after doing a bunch of keys this week and also doing this simulation, I can with certainty say that haste is the best stat to pick here. Haste just makes us scale really well because it makes it so we proc our tier set more often, and it also makes it so we kill bosses more effectively because haste is a really good stat to kill bosses with. Mastery is the second place. It's behind haste by about 1.5%, and after that critical strike, and at dead last is versatility. Versatility is really bad. It got nerfed so hard that it's not even worth taking. You get versatility by default if you forget to pick your stats, so don't forget to pick it. Always pick something that's going to be useful for you. Okay, having said that, now let's go to the next part, Legendaries. Okay guys, so for Legendaries, I have two that are going to be our mainstay for this season. The first one is Tempest of the Lightbringer. As always, it's just a really powerful legendary. It does its job. The Divine Storm that it procs is also uncapped AoE, so it's going to do a lot of damage in big packs of mobs. For example, places that come into mind are Gambit with a lot of Murlocs, then Junkyard, and Iron Dogs, which also has a high density of mobs that you can pull and AoE down with this legendary. Most of the time you're also going to be using this thing on almost all keys on fortified weeks, with a small exceptions that I'm going to talk now, which you can actually swap a legendary because those dungeons have very low mob density. So what's the second legendary in question? This is the Magistrate's Judgment, which I will be calling now MJ from now on. So MJ is really powerful in tyrannical weeks because it gives you single target and AoE damage possibilities. It's a very flexible legendary. You just have to be watching the proc so you can like spam your abilities, you know, your Holy Power Spender abilities that cost 2 or get reduced. So there's 3 dungeons here that you might want to use MJ on tyrannical and fortified weeks, and those dungeons are Upper Karazhan, Workshop, and Grimrail Depot. Those dungeons have very low mob density, and most of their bosses are really annoying to deal with. So having an extra bit of single target to just blast them down is pretty useful. So MJ is a good alternative in those dungeons. Okay guys, now with legendaries out of the way, let's go to special items. Okay guys, let's talk about special gear. And first, let's talk about trinkets. So we have 2 slots of trinkets, you know. I normally always want to use an unused trinket and a passive trinket. That's the best combination that you can use. So let's talk about best unused trinket that you can get. So there are 3 options here. One is the Enforcer's Stun Grenade. So this season there isn't an Overwhelming Power Crystal or Inscrutable Quantum Device. Those trinkets are gone for the season, and the only 2-minute trinket that lines up with our cooldowns is this Enforcer's Stun Grenade. It's just a versatility trinket main stat, and then when you use it, it gives you a bunch of versatility, like 3/4 of First Sigil stats of versatility for 20 seconds. 20 seconds is also a nice number because that's exactly the amount of time your combat meditation lasts, so you can stack those things together to get a huge boost of extra damage when you use cooldowns. Okay, so that's one of the trinkets. The next one is the First Sigil. First Sigil is really powerful even in Mythic Plus dungeons if you're comfortable using it. The problem with the First Sigil is, even though it seems better than the Enforcer's Stun Grenade, is the annoyance of using it, because you will have like one extraordinary wings and then you will have like two mediocre wings after that, which is not the best, you know, but it's a pretty decent trinket if you're comfortable using it. After that, we have one more unused trinket, and I say unused with like special characters, you know, because this trinket is called the Scars or Fraternal Strike. You use it every 30 seconds. You put a rune on you, and every rune you put gives you a set amount of secondary stats. It gives you about like 480 stats, probably more on higher item levels. And then after you use it the 5th time, it will give you double those stats, and it will explode, doing some damage in an AoE around you. So this trinket is really powerful. It's actually pretty decent stats because it got buffed in Season 4. The problem with this trinket is, even though it seems really well, it can actually kill you because it has negative effects attached to it. You reduce your healing taken by 5%. You reduce your movement speed by 20%, which can be mitigated to a certain extent with freedom. You take extra damage, and you also, there's one more drawback. You start bleeding like damage over time constantly. So those are a lot of drawbacks, and this trinket can be really detrimental, especially on tyrannical weeks where there's bosses that can like one-shot you or close to one-shot you in this new season. So even though this trinket simulates really well, I would still consider just taking the Enforcer's Stun Grenade, because it just does its damage and you don't have to pay anything to do it. You press the button and you will get your stats and you can do your damage. So these are the 3 options that you can pick. Me personally, I'm always going to pick the Enforcer's Stun Grenade. I just feel it's a really comfortable trinket. When I press it, it does my damage and I can stack my cooldowns when I want. Okay, now let's go to our passive slot of trinkets. There is no dispute here. There's one king of trinkets here, and this is the Old Warrior Soul. This trinket just gives you so much haste, and it also has main stat strength on top of an extra effect that heals someone when they're dying under 50% health. It's just a really powerful trinket. We have this new currency, the dinars, from this quest, Crossing Fate. You will get 3 of these to buy any raid piece of gear this season. So if you can just fill up this quest and get those dinars, you can just get 1 free Old Warrior Soul from a vendor. So I recommend getting that specific piece as your second passive trinket. Other than that, we do have one replacement until you get that Old Warrior Soul, which is Solia's Secret Technique. Solia's Secret Technique is just a pretty decent option, gives you main stat strength, and you can pick whatever stat. You give someone stats and you get those stats as well. So normally we pick someone that has haste, so they give us haste, because that's the most used stat that most people have. You know, it's really hard to get, like, for example, mastery or burst, because not many people stack those stats. So haste is a nice stat to get from that Solias. So those are our 2 options for passive trinkets. Okay guys, now let's go to the next one, and this is the Mechanom Rings. Okay guys, so Mechanom Rings are new this season, and they are extremely powerful. I currently have the Mechanom Ring combo. So let's go to Operation Mechanom. 1 drops from Workshop and 1 drops from Junkyard. So let's talk about the Junkyard first. So these rings are called Logic Loops, and there's 4 of them. So you want to get these, only 1 of them. And whenever you have this ring, it tells you, like, if you do something, you will get an effect. That's the second part of the other ring. So what logic loop you want? You want the logic loop of division, or you want the logic loop of recursion. The logic loop of division does the effect whenever you hit any enemy from behind, and the logic loop of recursion does the effect whenever you hit a single target enemy with 3 different spells. So it can even be yourself. If you heal yourself, use Horse, and let's say Freedom, you get the haste. So both are 2 really efficient ways to proc the effect of the second ring. And okay, now let's look at the second ring. This one drops from Workshop. These are called the Bit Bands. So there's 2 also here rings that are pretty decent here. The most powerful one is the Overcloaking Bit Band. So this is the one that you really want to get. As you can see here, I have one, and at item level 291, it gives me 105 haste for 15 seconds. That's basically like having a second Solius trinket. It's that strong. So this one is the one you really want. But if for whatever reason you don't get lucky, and the shorten bit band, if it drops, it's also a pretty decent option, but only in single target. It's not really powerful in AoE. At the end of the dungeon, it's probably gonna do 1%, probably 1.5% of your damage maybe, but it's not as good as the overcloaking bit band. So those are the two ones that you should be looking for as a Retribution Paladins. The other ones have defensive effects that we normally don't care about. Okay, so now let's go to the next part, which is best in slot weapon. Okay guys, let's talk about our best in slot weapon, and this is the Gable of the First Arbiter, the Jailer's weapon. Although it has an RNG drawback, it doesn't really matter as much as it did back in Season 3, since this weapon is less of AoE big pulls this season and more of killing bosses, so it can backfire less. Before, like in Season 3, if you got the single target proc on AoE, you were really sad, but now there isn't that many AoE pulls, so this weapon is pretty decent. So I did some simulations comparing it to my current log weapon. It gives me an extra 15% damage, so that's a really strong weapon and deserving of one of our dinners this season. So we do have a second option though. If you don't want to deal with the RNG of the Gable, you can always pick Jaitis the Prison Blade. This weapon requires 0 setup from your group and also 0 setup from you because it's only a proc. 311 Jaitis will give you about 650 strength buff for 3 seconds. So you could compare this with our 2-piece tier set, which gives us Seraphim. The proc rate is also really decent. It's 2.5 procs per minute that can be improved by haste. So it's a pretty decent weapon that doing the same simulation like I did for the Gable compared to my current weapon log, Jaitis gave me an extra 9% damage. So although it's 6% behind the Gable, it's still a very decent weapon to get if you don't want to deal with the minigame of the Jailer's weapon. Anyways guys, I myself will get Jaitis first since I never got to play with that weapon and when Sanctum of Domination was current here. But we do have 3 dinners, so you can always use it, one to buy Old Warrior Soul, one to buy the Gable, and the other one to buy Jaitis. So having options is a good idea. Okay guys, that's the end of the video. Well guys, I really hope you enjoyed it and it was useful to you. I saw a lot of these questions in the Retribution Paladin Discord, so I wanted to make this video to shed some light upon them, you know. And well guys, if you like my content, subscribe to the channel and leave a like to the video. It helps me a ton. Thanks for watching everyone.